What's going on, everybody? And I hope you're enjoying your Saturday afternoon / early Saturday evening. NYG Jeffy T85 here, and I'm going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. And I know I mentioned this in a couple of my previous videos, but the Nets are going to be going into one of the most intriguing and very interesting off seasons that they have had in a very long time as an organization. Now, we know about the hype around this team at the beginning of the NBA season in 2022-2023. Durant, Irving, Simmons, and all the roster pieces they had, including bringing in guys like a TJ Warren, like an Edmund Sumner, like a Royce O'Neal, like a Yuta Watanabe, like a Markieff Morris. But everything didn't go according to plan. Team got off to a rough start. They were able to get back on the right track. We're on their way to the number one seed in the Eastern Conference until Kyrie Irving got himself into a little bit of hot water. Ended up wanting to get traded out of the organization. He gets traded to Dallas. Nets get back Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith along with picks. Kevin Durant gets traded a couple of days later on the NBA trade deadline. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and draft picks come back on the report. Come back to the Brooklyn Nets. And now the Nets ended up finishing in the number 6 seed and ended up getting swept by the Philadelphia 76ers in the NBA first round series. And now the Nets have to decide what is their next direction going into this offseason. They can either do one of two things. They can either try and go for the quick fix, retooling, and go superstar hunting again, to possibly bring in another star on this team to pair with their young core that they have put together right now and pieces on the team. Or they can decide to rebuild this entire organization, let Cam Johnson go in free agency or do a sign and trade with him, trade away Mikal Bridges and or Nicolas Claxton and just go with a full-on rebuild. And it's going to be a lot of interesting decisions for the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, two of the biggest decisions on this basketball team is Cam Johnson's restricted free agency. What are you going to do with Ben Simmons after he came off a 42-game season where he ended up missing the rest of the season due to knee injury, knee inflammation, and back injury? And what are you going to do with two of your star players, Mikal Bridges and Nicolas Claxton? Are they the future of this team, or are you going to try to package them for picks? But it goes even deeper than that. The Nets also have a lot of players this offseason that are going into the final year of their contracts, including Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, Nicolas Claxton, Royce O'Neal, and Patty Mills. All 5 of those players are going into the last year of their contracts, and the Nets have to decide if they want to try to keep some of these players on the roster, re-up them, or use them as potential trade chips going into the offseason and try and see if they can upgrade the roster, whether it be with young pick players that are either on long-term deals that they can build the roster with, or they can try to sell off some of these guys for some potential draft picks that they lost in the trade for James Harden last offseason during the NBA trade deadline. So Nets have a lot of interesting decisions that they are going to have to make this offseason, and it's going to be very curious how this team is going to go about things. Obviously, right now, the most important is, what do you do with Cam Johnson? That's the number one question. Are you going to sign him long-term? Right now, there's reports going out there that he can command around a 4-year deal worth over $92 million overall. Probably even a larger contract than that. Are you going to be willing to give Cam Johnson that type of deal after he got traded over to Brooklyn and he actually put up some pretty solid production for the Brooklyn Nets? Are you willing to try to make that type of deal going forward? Then, what do you do with Ben Simmons? That is the $1 million question. I know the Nets would love to try to trade this guy, but his value is so low. Are the Nets going to have to package Ben Simmons with some draft picks or young players on the roster like a Cam Thomas, a Day'Ron Sharpe, and some of their draft picks they already have to go out there and get themselves another star player like a Damian Lillard, who has been linked to the Brooklyn Nets ever since he showed up at the BarclaysCenter during Game 3 of the NBA playoffs against the Philadelphia 76ers back in April. That's going to be some of the intriguing things this Brooklyn Nets team has got to consider. Do you consider Mikal Bridges the franchise cornerstone of this roster, or because of how high his value is right now, would the Nets be intrigued to possibly dangle and trade a Mikal Bridges in order to get a major haul back for Bridges, who's 26, going to be 27 years old, and really emerged as a potential superstar in the NBA after the incredible season that he had, getting traded over from Phoenix, getting over to the Brooklyn Nets, where he started emerging in Phoenix, but he really took his game to the next level when he get over to the Brooklyn Nets at the NBA trade deadline. And then also, like I mentioned, the expiring deals. Do you dangle a Dinwiddie, a Harris, a Claxton, an O'Neal, a Mills, and potentially a Dorian Finney-Smith, who he still has a contract for at least another couple of years, but do you dangle him as another player that you could potentially get some value for going this offseason? The Nets are going to have one of the most interesting offseasons in terms of any team in the NBA, because the Nets can go in two totally different directions. They can either go for a full-on rebuild, or they can go on with a retool and just fix up their roster and try and see, with the talent they currently have on the team, you get yourself another superstar to pair with a Cam Johnson, a Nicolas Claxton, a Mikal Bridges. You try to pair up with those guys and see if this Nets team can go out there and potentially compete for an NBA championship, or at least a chance to be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference going into the 2023-2024 season. I'm starting to think, because I believe Sean Marks is not in a comfortable position as the Brooklyn Nets general manager right now, that I do believe the Nets are going to try and see if they can make some sort of big move, because I do think Sean Marks will be on somewhat of a hot seat. Yes, they did sign Jacques Vaughn to a long-term deal, and what does that mean for Vaughn if your general manager, who just signed your head coach to a long-term deal, is only on is on the hot seat? What does that mean for Vaughn? It's going to be an interesting thing to really monitor, but at the same time, I do believe in my heart of heart that that Sean Marks is going to have to do something to convince the Nets fans to be able to buy tickets and want to see the Brooklyn Nets go into this offseason. So I do believe the Nets will try to make some type of move this offseason to improve this roster going into 2023-2024, and try not to just go with a total rebuild of the current players on the team, because that's just pretty much saying we're giving up and we're going to be tanking on this upcoming season. I don't see the Nets doing that because of the tumultuous nature that they had to go through last year, but at the same time, I don't see this Nets team taking every single one of their young assets and trading it away just for the quick fix again. I think if it's the right value, the right trade for the right player, I think the Nets will make the move. But if it's not, I can see the Nets adding some pieces on this team to help this team compete going into next year with the players they have on the roster, and letting this team build up the necessary chemistry that they were starting to put together during the end of the season, because this team only played together essentially about 27, 28 games in the regular season and a few games in the playoffs. So this team still has more chemistry to build up with the current collection of talent they have, including adding some more in the draft and in NBA free agency and through trade. But we'll wait and see what the Brooklyn Nets are going to do this offseason. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think about what the Brooklyn Nets and which direction they will go this offseason. And of course, hit that like button if you haven't already, and give a sub to NYG Jeffy T85. More news, updates, and chatter around the Brooklyn Nets. And of course, if you enjoy the channel, give a little like, give a little perk, and show your support for NYG Jeffy T85. Links in the chat. Your NYG Jeffy T85, the YouTube channel, and Jeffy T85 on Twitter, if you want to know some of the links of where to find me on social media. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. Take it easy, and as always, let's go Brooklyn Nets. It's a Nets world, and we are all just living in it.